I was just looking at it, and I just noticed like a few little things that you could just kind of do away with, like mostly like in the graph editor kind of thing. So yeah, because like overall it works really, really well. So we could go through like the whole, just whatever, like 100, 430 frames or whatever.
Yeah.
But like what I like to do when I just break it down anyway is to just go by, I don't know, almost 3 seconds, I guess. So like 75-ish frames.
Yeah.
It's just like a good, like digestible chunk of animation to look at.
Mm-hmm.
So like if I play it through, even at, it's a little bit laggy probably for you, but for me, it's not playback, like isn't perfect, but
Yeah.
Even still, like at this speed, it looks good, but there's just like these little tiny things that I notice.
Mm-hmm.
I went in here and grabbed both torso controls. Here, let's look at it in perspective. I'll show you. There's like, he's going to rotate, I guess, right and then left before he stretches up his arms.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, okay.
You see, yeah, you see it now, right? So if I open up the graph editor.
That'd be rotate Z.
Yeah, it's actually on Y and Z, right? And you can
Oh, Y and Z, yeah.
Can you see the graph? Is it moving okay for you?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so if I like, you can see like X is okay. Really, it's like it's pretty smooth almost throughout the whole piece, which is great. But then if you look at Y and Z, see it has like peaks and valleys, and then same thing with the other set of values, right? So you can basically just delete that because you don't really need it. Like you don't really need this here.
Yeah.
It's too quick to really describe anything. It's just a few frames, and then it's got quite a big dip, right? So it's like you've got like 1, 2, and then that happens, and then 1, 2, and you're completely out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can just kind of do away with that, and we'll just see what it looks like when I just get rid of all of it, basically, because you really don't need really anything in there, like because you're just kind of going from here to there anyway,
Yeah.
This is like a much cleaner curve. And then same with here. You don't really need any of that because at this point it doesn't get you anything, not really. Like where the rest of the piece is already so carved out, like because he walks in and he like stretches, right? You just kind of want one smooth move. And what you had before is like a lot of little slow in and slow out moments, and like really quickly, like over a few frames. So then it just ends up looking like a hitch. So this is something like we've been talking about at work a lot lately because there's a lot of juniors and they're really not familiar with how kind of high quota animation works. They're just not familiar with it all yet.
Mm-hmm.
They'll say stuff like, well, how do you even know how quick something should take? Like how do I know that this action should take 12 frames? Like you don't have that problem. You've got the 430 frame piece and it's all timed out quite nicely, right? But you've got like little tiny hitches and stuff like that. So this kind of goes along with them asking that, how do they know when to time something out at 12 frames or 24 frames or 3 frames if it's really cartoony? It's just experience, really. You just do it and you get a particular result and it looks good and the client likes it and your lead likes it and all that stuff. But then there's like almost a hidden component of that. Not how do I time out something in a larger sense, like how fast should this walk be, 25 frames for 2 steps or whatever. Like that's a bigger idea on how to time stuff. But these little tiny hitches in the graph editor, that's almost like more advanced timing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Timing and spacing. So in the case of a lot of these keys, like I'll bring them back, they're just happening like too quickly, Like we did here. We went through the frames and it's like 1, 2, 1, 2. And then if we pull this aside and just bring this value up to see what it's actually doing. Oops. So it's doing that, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the movement it wants to make, but it's trying to do it in just 2 short frames and then resetting to class, right? So you have 2 options really. You can just do this, right? And then that pads out that whole movement. and lower this down to favor the previous.
Yeah.
And then you can lower this, right? You have that option for sure, but then you have to like kind of do it here as well, right? So it's almost more work than it's worth when you could just kind of get rid of that whole section.
Yeah.
And because it ends about here and starts around here where that 2-frame rotation started to pop in, and really you could just kind of delete it all because it's trying to describe too much in such a short space, right? And we can put something else there instead. So then I think we can just kind of in broad strokes do it here. So come in here, around here. And I would even, just visually speaking, I would just delete it right till here. Just this feels right, you know? It's a more gradual rotation. And then we just took those 2 controls at a time, but it actually also happens up here. And I know that just because I looked at the piece earlier. But you can kind of see it when you play it back. And I know it's just in rotation. So right here again, you can see X isn't too bad. It's fairly consistent. It's spaced out quite nicely. Nothing happens too fast, right? But then here, it's like a bunch of stuff happens again in such a short space. So I think you can probably get rid of all that to here just to make one smooth curve. And not to say you would keep it that way, but we're just like kind of cleaning stuff up. And then like look at all this crazy stuff.
I know. I like when I was doing last time I opened this file, and then I realized that because I've been struggling with that. Like, I'll do my my blocking, and then once I like pretty much happy with it, and then I start splitting it, and then I realize, there's like a lot of jitters, and I'm like, maybe I left something. And then I realized that when I was doing my blocking, I was doing my selection, like something will be left behind.
There's definitely a way to like, it's funny because I never blocked. Like I really didn't do it until I got to ARC. I never had to, you know what I mean? Like the shows I was on, I was always like, well, early on in my career, nobody cared really. Nobody gave a shit, to be honest.
Yeah.
They didn't care. It was like so long ago. They just wanted to get a show at the door. Whatever. Nobody cared. So it was kind of easy back then. But then the more I got on in my career and then like the more senior I got, then people just left me alone. They were like, he knows what he's doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And nobody was like checking my work. No, I mean, they were checking it to look at it, but nobody was looking at my method. Nobody cared if they could even decipher it because we just had a very different structure. But then when I got to ARC, oh man, there were some real artists there, and they were looking. You know, they were in your shots.
Yeah.
They were sitting at your desk, like move over. You know what I mean? You better have auto key on, stuff like that. And then you're like, okay. Okay. So then I had the block. But then I had the same problem that you're having here in the shots. Like I had a really complicated shot, 2-character shot. And they had to touch each other, interact with each other, and all that. But I had to block it up. I wasn't allowed to straight ahead. I wasn't allowed to do my normal layered approach kind of method. So I was really freaking out. I didn't know what to do. I just blocked. I was so scared not to that I just did it. But the good thing is like if you're able to recognize there's jitters and stuff in your shot, then you were in the same boat I was in. Like, oh no,
Yeah.
and I have to clean this up. Like I have to get this shot through. So I think the difference, though, either you didn't have time or you didn't know, like when just to instinctually look at the graph editor and say like, oh, all that stuff, those are hitches, you know. And they're not going to work. I'm going to need to time them out in a very different way, you know? So that's exactly what I would do. I would like block a piece out so that they could have the idea of the shot, right? But I knew that there were only so many poses I was going to keep because they didn't necessarily all relate to each other in the way that is conducive to smooth animation, you know? So I would go in and like, you know, have a pose every 2 or 3 frames or 5 frames, whatever it was. And then I would treat each little segment as a pose to pose type of animation, you know? And then once I had enough of those pose to pose animations, then I could start to take out some of the middle bits to make it not feel pose to pose. Yeah, because that's what pose to pose is it's blocking refined to a point where it just feels very much like I'm going to do pose 1. Now I'm going to pose 2. But the timing is too even. So that's what you need to do is like you need to, once you start to in between your blocking, you actually have to take stuff out. You can't rely on just leaving it in. Like the pose was a good benchmark. It was a good place to get to, but it might not have necessarily been the thing that's going to in between the best, you know? Yeah. So I think if we play this back, like, and now I see like there's other hitches and stuff, but I'll have to look at that like further ahead in the piece. But like if we'll just concentrate on the first sort of 70 whatever 5 frames, 76 frames. But if we look at this back in the camera view, I think it'll look a little bit smoother, and then we can keep doing it to other parts of the body.
I already see it.
Yeah, right. And it's not like I didn't really have to do anything. All I did was just remove stuff. That's it. You had like a bunch of junk in the graph editor you didn't need. That's this is you. This is your posing. This is your timing. I just took out some rotations you didn't need. That's all it was, right? If we go back to perspective, the arm is kind of doing a similar thing. Like it's kind of sticking a bit right in here. There's just a lot of extraneous movement. Like the arm is kind of, it's not sure what it wants to do.
That's the right screen arm, right?
Yes, yeah. Right, yeah. And because, I think it's only 3 controls, but, and because the whole point of a shot is kind of to create tension or to show that someone's relaxed, like it's to create a sense of ease or somewhere in between. You know what I mean? Like those, not to say those are the only types of emotions you can display on screen, but I think those are 2 good umbrella type of terms, like the tensed emotions and then there are the relaxed emotions.
To relax, yeah.
Yeah, and there's kind of everything in between. So in this case, I think he's going into a yawn, so you kind of just want to have an ease to it. It all just needs to be a little, loose.
Yeah.
So here I think it's the same thing. Like if we look at the arm, there's just a few too many values in certain places. Like I can see up here in X, and then there's probably going to be a bunch in Z. And not so much Y, but I think we could just clean it up. So instead of doing it in the graph editor though, which it's not hard to do. It's just, instead of doing it that way, I think we could just do it on the timeline. So I might even just start with a pose like this, because in this case, it's like, it's not that the timing and spacing is off necessarily. And it's not that the posing's off necessarily. It's just there's too much going on. So I think this pose, which just to me seems a little bit more relaxed. And then I might just like, I'll do the opposite. I'll bring that pose back. And then I might just delete some of this stuff and then create new slow in and slows out. Or slow in and slow out, I guess, yeah. So because this is really only like a 15 frame move, that's not that bad for an arm movement, especially walking forward. You think like I guess 13 frames would be 1 full stride, so that's yeah. But just for the fun of it, maybe we just rotate it back like just a tiny little bit. Then it gives us like somewhere to go. And I'll just rotate them all at once.
If you switch from world to local or the other way around, is it the same and the value would be the same in the graph editor?
Yeah, more or less, right? I mean, you can get gimbal lock that way, but it's not too big a difference. It just kind of depends.
Oh yeah. I just like I've always wondered in terms of translating.
Yeah. No, not really. Like, and you can see here too. Like, so this will be a world value, right? It doesn't change that much. Yeah. And
Oh,
then
okay.
same with like or sorry, that was an object value, and this will be a world value here. So again, they don't change that much, you know.
Okay.
But you can get gimbal lock. But then if you do, you just like select all your curves and hit Euler filter or Euler
Oh
filter.
yeah.
Yeah, right. So then you'll be okay either way. Because it's like you're posing it out where you want to pose it. So
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, so all I'll do right there is just like we just took out a few keys that you didn't need, and then we just picked a different point for the pose. And then here around frame 27 is where it starts to slow in a little too much. So we can just kind of bring that back so that it's not hanging there. Or you can even, if you want, you can delete it and then put that back to like 15, 16, and it should be okay. But you can
Yeah.
create your own tension however you want. Like you could time that out. He could come up quick and then slow, or he could just do a whole kind of language.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right? Yeah. Do the same thing for the other arm, right? It's just sometimes there's just too much described in such a short amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the way Maya works, it's just calculating these values really close together, and it just kind of confuses the eye a little bit to see that much information in a short space of time.
I think I got that when I'm not really sure, but when I try to offset both arms,
Oh,
I
okay.
might have slided one of them.
There's like it's hard to describe really, but there's a way to animate and pose so that you don't have to offset.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit of a more advanced thing. It requires knowing a lot about the anatomy, and then a lot about what the whole body's doing at once. So then when you pose your arm out, like this is the follow through pose. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you don't have to offset anything after the fact. It's just already built into your poses. That's a big part of like facial animation as well, because the keys there are so many keys in the face. There's so many controls on the face that when you start to key it out, if you're then offsetting after the fact, there's a key on every single frame, and it gets really hard to edit. So it's like, yeah, it just takes a little bit of practice doing it, but I still offset after the fact. I absolutely do. I just then go back in and clean up
Mm-hmm.
the timeline and the graph a little bit, just so I'm not like trying like what the hell, what did I do, And unless I don't have time, then I don't care. I just pass the file off to someone else. So yeah, so same here. Like, there's just almost like an extra rotation,
Mm-hmm.
like kind of right in here. And I can't. Let's see. I might just delete this. Yeah, that's a little better. Yeah. So if we just did that, and whoops, I did that again. Okay. Yeah, and then we'll go back into the camera. I'll check it. Damn it! That's the third time I did that. Okay. I'm trying to like tuck my graph editor away. So yeah, it just looks a little bit more. It's smoother, right? Yeah.
I can feel it right away. I can tell the difference.
There's one last thing I'll do. So if I look at Z, I bet we could kind of do the same thing here. Because he's feeling a little. Yeah,
Oh,
a little. You see the hitch and the yeah. So I bet we could smooth that out. I see a little bit too much in Y as well, but this is an easy fix. I'll just scale all these down. And that's not too bad. And you can delete these because now the timing and spacing is the same, or you can bring them down in favor. It's up to you. That should be good there. And then let's smooth out the leg, and then we'll deal with the hips right after. A lot of this is just done by feel too, you know, it's like there's no wrong answer. It just depends on what style you're aiming for.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's more natural, then people get a lot more picky because it's got to be like super anatomical, right? But if it's cartoony, well, then people are a little bit more forgiving as long as the shapes are nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then the timing, right? It's got to be like, you know, zippy but cushioned. So here, he's just a little far forward, but now that I fix the leg, I don't really mind it that much. So I think we could just smooth out some of the forward momentum, just because like after a while, once the weight gets going, then he's just gonna kind of move in a pretty smooth way. Like we could probably slow that out by a frame or two. Yeah, I mean, generally with like walking, it is a little bit smoother. I mean, it kind of depends on, I guess, who's walking, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it definitely smooths out a little bit. But I mean, that doesn't bother me that much, you know. It's a nitpicky thing, but I guess that's why we're here. So yeah, again, just kind of smoothing all that out, you know.
Yeah. There's no hesitation in walking now.
Yeah, he just kind of just gets on with it, right? So, because I think before it felt maybe like he was waiting for the director to call action, you know.
Yeah.
Please, this action, go, you know. And then he was, yeah, let's do it. Why?
Like there's a starting line or something.
Yeah. Which is fun, but you know, if you're going for like, you know, smooth and all that kind of stuff. But honestly, like that's it. Like I looked through the whole piece, and that's pretty well what it is. It's just these little moments of hesitation or a little bit of extra stuff in the graph editor that you just don't need. But the ideas are there, right? Like that's a great thing to have already set. Like at least we're not sitting here saying like, oh geez, why is he bashing the cup over his head? That's weird, you know, like at least it's well acted kind of thing. So if you just want to smooth it out or get to that next level of polish, that's all it is, you know.
Mm-hmm.
The graph editor and deleting little keys that don't quite make sense, or you know, there's too much change of value in such a short amount of time. You can smooth all that kind of stuff out, right? So